Hi everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today, we're kicking off a new series on Spring Boot with Spring Data JPA. In this first video, I'll give you a clear and simple introduction to Spring Data JPA. We'll understand what it is, why it's used, and how it makes working with databases in Spring Boot much easier. So, what exactly is Spring Data JPA? Well, Spring Data JPA is a part of the larger Spring Data family. It makes it much easier to interact with relational databases using plain Java objects, also known as entities, without writing complex SQL or boilerplate code. Basically, it simplifies the entire data access layer in a Spring Boot application. Instead of manually dealing with things like Entity Manager, writing queries, or managing transactions, you simply define an interface, like JPA repository, and Spring takes care of the implementation automatically at runtime. By default, it uses Hibernate under the hood as the JPA provider, but it's flexible enough to work with others too. So, why should you use Spring Data JPA? Because it gives you a lot out of the box, without writing much code. You get automatic CRUD operations, support for custom query methods, built-in pagination, sorting, and even the ability to write JPQL or native SQL queries when needed. All of this helps you write cleaner, more readable, and maintainable code, and most importantly, it saves you a lot of time. Now let's talk about some of the interfaces provided by Spring Data JPA. Starting with a really interesting one, Query by Example Executor. This interface lets you build queries using a sample or example object. Here's how it works. You create a dummy entity object and set only the fields you want to filter by. Spring will then automatically build a query to search for records that match those field values. Now let's talk about another very important interface. Paging and Sorting Repository. As the name suggests, this interface provides built-in support for pagination and sorting. So, if your application deals with large datasets, like users, products, orders, this interface helps you fetch results in pages, and also lets you sort those results by any field. For example, instead of loading 10,000 records at once, you can load just 10 or 20 per page, improving both performance and user experience. Now let's look at another useful interface introduced in Spring Data. List Paging and Sorting Repository. It extends Paging and Sorting Repository, but with a small improvement that makes a big difference. All the findAll methods return a list instead of an iterable. That might sound minor, but it's actually quite helpful, because in most real-world scenarios, we work with lists directly in our services, controllers, or even in the front end. So with this interface, you still get all the features of paging and sorting, but with a more convenient return type. Now let's talk about the most basic and foundational interface. CRUD repository. As the name suggests, it provides all the basic CRUD operations. That's create, read, update, and delete. You get methods like save, to insert or update a record, find by ID, and findAll, to fetch data, delete by ID, and delete all, to remove records. This interface is perfect when you just need standard database operations without pagination or advanced features. And the best part? You don't need to write any implementation. Spring Data generates it for you at runtime. Now let's look at another interface introduced in Spring Data 3. List CRUD repository. It's very similar to CRUD repository, but with one key improvement. Instead of returning an iterable, it returns a list directly, which is what we use most often in real-world code. For example, findAll, in CRUD repository, returns an iterable. But in list CRUD repository, it returns a list. This small change makes your code cleaner and avoids unnecessary conversions. So if you're using Spring Data 3 or above, and want basic CRUD with list support, list CRUD repository is a great choice. And finally, let's talk about the most powerful and most commonly used interface. JPA repository. This interface extends List CRUD repository, List Paging and Sorting repository, and Query by Example Executor, and adds even more advanced JPA-related features. It supports everything we've discussed so far: CRUD operations, pagination, sorting, query methods, and also adds extra capabilities like batch inserts and updates, the flush method to immediately sync with the database, support for at query annotations using JPQL or native SQL. If you look at the table on the screen, you'll see that JPA repository covers all the features provided by the other interfaces we just discussed. That's why, in most real-world Spring Boot applications, JPA repository is the recommended choice. Alright, that wraps up the introduction to Spring Data JPA and its repository interfaces. In the next few videos, we'll get hands-on and implement full CRUD operations using the JPA repository interface step by step. So if you're excited to build real applications with Spring Boot and JPA, don't forget to hit like, drop a comment if you have any questions, subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next part in this series. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.